Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. There was another tragic mass shooting in America, and in this incident, which took place at the Tulsa Medical Center, a man went into the facility looking for a doctor he had an issue with and wound up murdering 4 people before taking his own life. Now, this incident takes place just a week after the mass shooting where 19 children lost their lives in the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Now, the police are seeing this mass shooting that took place in Oklahoma City as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of this mass shooting at the Tulsa Medical Campus, it fits right in line with the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that the shooter in this incident was possibly a man in crisis because he had serious issues with the doctor he was looking for. And when it comes down to beta males, most of them do not really know how to conflict resolve, and because they do not know how to conflict resolve, they wind up going to extremes as related to minor issues they are having. Now, I know that there is a lot of bureaucracy as related to the Affordable Care Act, and that can make it very difficult for a individual if they're having medical issues or issues with a doctor. However, a man does not have to go to the extremes of looking to participate in violence in order to solve a problem they are having with a medical facility. Unfortunately, many beta males don't really understand conflict resolution, and oftentimes these males, whenever they have to deal with a really serious situation like something as related to medical issues, is these males they get very emotional, and when they cannot get any sort of resolution, they simmer and boil in rage, and then as they're boiling in rage, they eventually wind up exploding in that rage, and they wind up participating in a spectrum of violent behaviors. Unfortunately, in this case, this individual wound up probably being upset about his doctor or a diagnosis and decided that since he had nothing really to live for at this point, he decided to go out in infamy by participating in this mass shooting where he went there basically again looking to murder his doctor, but unfortunately he did not find his doctor, and since he did not find his doctor and he felt like he had nothing to lose, this is where this individual wound up taking out the firearms that he brought with him, a long gun, a rifle, and a pistol, and he wound up participating in the mass shooting where he wound up murdering 4 people that definitely had absolutely nothing to do with this. Now, this is what beta males do whenever they're angry. They don't really think critically about anything because they have been raised to feel and act on their emotions. And when they act on their emotions, sadly, they wind up doing harm to others that are around them. And sadly, what happened here is that 4 innocent people wound up losing their lives inside of this Tulsa medical building after this beta male got so angry about the treatment he was receiving at this medical facility that he wound up taking these people's lives before taking his own life. Now, many will sit there and say that this again is a gun control issue, but the big problem is that most Americans don't really want to confront the real issue, which has to do with the way we have been raising boys to become men in this country. And over the last 60 years in this country, we have not confronted the fact that we have really done a poor job raising boys to become men in this country because we don't want to acknowledge the fact that the approaches we used in the 60s to create the kinder, gentler, softer male is creating all of these ticking time bombs, which have become landmines due to the lockdowns of the COVID 19 pandemic. And in the aftermath of those lockdowns, many of these men have their clocks accelerated as related to the anger that they have been seething in, and that's what's making American society turn into eggshells because you don't know when or where these men are going to explode in their rage or what damage they're going to do in society. Now, this is the 233rd, I believe, mass shooting here in America, and sadly, many of our politicians and many of our pundits and many of those who are in authoritative positions really still don't have a clue to why we are seeing this increase in frequency in violence as related to these mass shootings. Well, it's very simple for me to see why we're seeing this increase in frequency due to these mass shootings, and it's due to the fact that many American men feel like they have no sense of hope. Many American men feel like they have no sense of purpose. Many American men feel like they have no direction, and that is all due to the way they have been raised in American society to be this, again, kinder, gentler, softer male. And whenever you bring hard times to a soft male, the soft male winds up getting frustrated. The soft male winds up getting angry. The soft male winds up getting frustrated. And the soft male winds up short circuiting and exploding in rage because the soft male was told that everything was going to be easy, but when the hard times come, the beta male is not mentally or socially equipped to deal with anything. Now, this is not saying that the beta male is mentally ill, because the beta male is not mentally ill. No, the beta male has been raised in a way where they're used to everything going easy, and because they have never developed any of the internal characteristics that men had in previous generations, like discipline, resolve, or the ability to take rejection, or basic social life skills like the ability to use logic and reason or critically think, these males are not equipped to deal with the world that they're in. No, these males have basically been raised with female life skills, and because they've been raised by females and taught to submit to female authority figures, they go out here expecting the world to cater to them, not understanding in the world men have to deal with a completely different world than women do, and that men have it hard in the world. So these men don't know how to deal with the world, and that's why they're looking to destroy the world around them, because they're frustrated because they can't make the world work. And when they can't make the world work the way women told them that it was supposed to work for them, what they look to do is destroy the world around them. And possibly this man had some sort of health issue that he felt like it wasn't going to get resolved. So he thought, oh, I'm going to go into this facility. I'm going to make this doctor pay for messing up my life. And then I'm going to go out in infamy because I have nothing to live for at this point. And this is seeming to become a mindset for multiple generations of men who are looking at a world where they see no purpose for themselves, no place for themselves, and no ability to achieve anything. So since they don't see anything in the world for them, they go out here looking to destroy the world. And again, this is the main reason why you're seeing this increase in frequency in this kind of violence, like these mass shootings, because many of these males, they just don't know how to function in the world, and because they don't know how to function in the world, they look to destroy the world around them because of the way that they were raised as boys in some single mother households, divorced households, and households without fathers. These men don't know how to function in the world, and since they don't know how to function in the world, again, they look to destroy anybody or anything in the world before taking their own life. And this is something that many especially the left, don't want to talk about. All they want to do is make it about gun control, and they're thinking that they can legislate their way out of this kind of violence with assault weapons bans and restrictions on guns. But this does not really solve the problem, because the problem is the way we have been raising boys to become men, and these beta males are just not equipped mentally or emotionally in, to be able to function in the world. And because these males are not able to function in the world, they just they just become extremely violent. And again, no politician wants to deal with the issues that are making these men violent, and they want to sidestep those issues because they don't want to go out here and call out the females for who are raising the family for the last 60 years. And they don't want to call out those females, because to call out those females would mean alienating the largest voting bloc in America, and the largest vote calling out the largest voting bloc in America about the way they have been raising boys to become men would definitely alienate all of those female voters. Unfortunately, it was the way the feminists taught the women to raise boys to become men that is creating all of this violence. But the politicians don't want to talk about the family, because the family is too hard an issue for them to confront. Unfortunately, if they do not confront the family, we are going to see more of this violence. And I have said that about 5 years ago, in about 2017 or 2018, we were going to see an increase in the frequency of this violence, because we have had the Tops mass shooting 2 weeks ago. A week ago, we had the mass shooting that took place at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. And now we're having this mass shooting that took place at the Tulsa medical facility. And it's just showing me how there are just so many landmines all across this country. And the scary part is that this is just the tip of the iceberg, because America has raised over 100 to 80 million beta males, and we have a serious situation that nobody wants to talk about, because many of your politicians are too scared to talk about it. Many of your mental health professionals are too scared to talk about it, and they don't want to acknowledge that we have a crisis situation with America's men. And if we don't start investing resources into our men, it's going to become a literally nuclear type disaster, because we're seeing that the society is becoming to the point where it's starting to become unsafe, because you don't know when one of these beta males is going to go off or what damage they're going to do in society, because we're seeing again this increase in frequency of this kind of violence. But sadly, many of your politicians don't want to talk about the core foundations of that violence, because again, they don't want to alienate the female voting bloc, which is the majority here in America, and tell them that they have failed at raising boys. And two, they don't want a finger pointed back at them, because it was many of their policies, like establishing the welfare state, giving women most of the employment here in America, and them going out here and creating no fault divorce that created this man crisis. And all of those fingers point back at especially one political party that supported and advocated for many of these policies 60 years ago. And to have that finger pointed back at them shows that their great society has become one great failure, because 60 years later, the so called kinder, gentler, softer man, who was supposed to be the head of their great society, is turning into a raging and violent individual. And ironically, that runs counter to everything that those feminists and those leftists said that these men would be 60 years later. Because 60 years ago, they thought, oh, if we raise this kinder, gentler, softer male, this kinder, gentler, softer male would lead America into a utopia. But what we're seeing is that because these men did not get their emotional needs met inside of a home, they did not get the guidance of a father, which many who created these programs and policies said we did not need. Many of these men are just completely falling apart 60 years later. And what's scary is that because of the what's going on here, we don't just have a handful of men participating in this kind of violence. No, we have 80 to 100 million men out here who are possibly capable of participating in this kind of violence, and have a motive for doing this because society has invested nothing in these men, and because society has invested nothing in these men as they have pushed girl power. Many of these men have no purpose. Many of these men have no direction. Many of these men have no hope, and since they feel like they have nothing to lose, again, this is why we're seeing all of this violence and why we're seeing these men go out here and participate in these extreme acts of violence, because many in America refuse to acknowledge the damage they did to the American family, and they refuse to acknowledge that the damage they did to the American family by taking God's steward, the man, and putting him at the bottom of society is leading to a man who has nothing to lose. And with a man with nothing to lose, you got a society where these men feel like they have a right to destroy everything because no one invested in them. And sadly, what we're seeing is nobody is still talking about the man crisis, even though we're seeing an increase in frequency of this violence, which shows me how deep the denial is as related to your politicians and your business owners. Even as they see their livelihoods practically being put on the brink, they refuse to acknowledge the man crisis because they think they're going to profit at the end of the day. But it's hard to profit in a society where it's becoming less and less safe because you refuse to acknowledge that many of these men out here are in a dire situation, and the only way you're going to deal with this dire situation is to go through the pain of acknowledging that your great society isn't so great, and the policies you created to make a great society have made a great big mess. So when I look at this whole incident that took place on that Oklahoma campus, again, it's just another incident in America's man crisis, and sadly, most in America refuse to acknowledge the man crisis because we don't really respect men, we don't really acknowledge men, we don't appreciate men, and until we start acknowledging the damage done to America's men, we are going to be in a nation where we're going to continue seeing an increase in the frequency of this violence, and we're going to see this man crisis continue to get worse instead of better, because we don't really invest in America's men, and we don't really help America's men get out of the crisis and move their lives forward. Now, if you want to learn more about what motivates males to participate in violence like this, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBook store, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos about men's issues, videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available for the first time on Google Play, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are falling apart in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy on Google Play.